King Radio Network at ParanormalKing.com.
Welcome to the Paranormal News Insider for the week of March 2nd, 2021, and this is officially episode number 469, and this is your host, Dr. Brian D. Parsons, and we are live on the Paranormal King Radio Network at ParanormalKing.com. And if it's Tuesday night for you, like it's Tuesday night for me, you want to head on over to the chat room. We got a lot of pictures to share to go along with the stories that we're going to talk about tonight. So again, ParanormalKing.com. Head over there, scroll down about halfway, and you'll find the chat room. Jump in there and join us tonight. So we got some photos that I'm going to share about a few of these stories, not just the big one that we were talking about last week. We've been waiting for some pictures to be released, and they were released a little earlier than we thought, pretty much about 24 hours early. Not that I was sitting there waiting. Well, I kind of was, sort of. But let's see. Before I get too far in, got to stop myself, put on the brakes, and I want to mention we do have some events happening this weekend, and I don't normally wait until the weekend before to talk about events because I know people plan things out in advance. But man, you can't. We're still kind of in that wait and see and hold on kind of mode with COVID-19 and events, large events. I know some states, some countries are laxing on things, or some countries are returning to normal, if whatever normal is. But here in the United States, it's a lot of touch and go in a lot of different places. So I'm really not, going to sit here and tell you stuff that's happening in April like I normally would. I'd normally give you the events lists about a month out, but I'm afraid to talk about them. I really am. However, this weekend, the Midwest Weird Fest in Eau Claire, Wisconsin, is supposed to be taking place March 5th through the 7th, has been canceled as far as I know. Not seen anything saying that it is canceled, so it looks like it's still on. And UFO Con 2021 is also this weekend, March 5th through the 7th. That one is safe to attend because it's online only. So it's essentially a Zoom conference where you get to listen to people talk. I don't know if I could do that all weekend, sit there and listen to people talk, but that's smart. I'm surprised that a lot of other organizations and events didn't jump on that a long time ago. And also, I didn't see this one. Somebody sent this along my way later on in the month. But they're advertising it. They've ran this in local media as well. The Smoky Mountain Bigfoot Festival takes place Saturday, May 22nd from 12 noon to 10 p.m. Bigfoot fun for the whole family. It's a nice website. You can find more information at thebigfest.com. So, yeah, Smoky Mountain Bigfoot Festival in Townsend, Tennessee. So, going to be a lot of fun down there. Obviously, probably not a whole lot of people, but they'll probably keep that as contained as possible. Not sure pricing or anything else. All I got was the website and a couple links to the event, and I'll get that added tonight. Boy, oh boy, I've not updated this thing in a while. It seems like February 25th. Doesn't look updated. Yeah, I'll get this thing updated. Don't worry about it. I'll get it. We'll get this thing updated. Yeah, I'm just too gun shy to talk about too many events too far out in the future here. So there's a small list for you right there. So I did mention that, you do want to be in the chat room And if you're not there, you're going to be too late. Our big story of the week is a follow-up on a story we talked about last week, and this is probably a pretty big, probably a pretty big. I guess it's one of the biggest cryptid stories of the year. We'll see how big it ends up being, but it's pretty much hit the end of the road. It really didn't last too long. We talked about it last week. There was a big announcement on February 22nd. Neil Waters of the Thylacine Awareness Group of Australia released a 3-minute, 20-second video discussing photographs that were discovered that seemingly validated that thylacines are alive and well in Tasmania, running around, chewing on stuff, showing off their stripes, whatever they do, I don't know. He talked about discovering photographs taken on a trail cam that would prove to the world once and for all that the Tasmanian tiger is alive and well. And he made it pretty matter-of-fact-ish. He was pretty adamant about it, and was also talking about getting a hold of government leaders to get this thing put on the endangered species list. That's how good these pictures were going to be, and everyone started getting excited, although a lot of people were a little apprehensive because we've heard about this before. Neil Waters, he's a true believer. He really feels these things exist, and you're not going to tell him otherwise. I mean, if you believe in something, you should be all in. But at the same time, you got to have a little bit of skepticism. And he's kind of not really open to the idea of the possibility that maybe they are extinct, that maybe they're not running around showing off their stripes on trail cams or, hiding from people. And that was short-lived. The video came out, and the following day, Nick Mooney, who is the honorary curator of vertebrate zoology at the Tasmanian Museum and Art Gallery, he was quoted by a museum spokesperson saying, quote, Nick Mooney has concluded that based on the physical characteristics shown in the photos provided by Mr. Waters, the animals are very unlikely to be thylacines and are most likely Tasmanian patamelons, unquote. He went on to say, TMAG regularly receives requests for verification from members of the public who hope the thylacine is still with us. However, sadly, there have been no confirmed sightings documented of the thylacine since 1936, unquote. So that didn't go over well, and it changed the headlines awful quick. So pretty much in 48 hours, we went from thylacine discovered to a false alarm, thylacine not discovered. It pretty much killed the entire wave of excitement. People were pretty apprehensive now to really believe in this. Only the hardcore believers that follow Neil Waters and this organization were the ones that were still hoping that there would be some pretty clear-cut evidence here. But yeah, I was kind of apprehensive myself. But he's pretty excited about these things. And so he said that yesterday, the target date last week was March 1st for releasing these pictures. But I tell you, and it's like any other animal, but there's a little bit of weirdness about this, little high strangeness. So there's a little speculation. There's a kind of I don't know how big it is or if it's growing, but there's a little contingency of people in Australia and Tasmania that think that there's people, most likely the government, they don't want the thylacine to be rediscovered because then they would have to spend money to study and protect it. It's kind of a conspiracy theory among the collective believers and Waters, Neil Waters. A lot of his group has kind of perpetuating this. And, it's possible. I've said the same thing about mountain lions. being rediscovered in the East. No way that any state east of the Mississippi is going to acknowledge an ambush predator running around the woods, because then people aren't going to want to go hunting. That's going to scare off a majority of people. Of course, you're going to have those crazy people that want to go out there and get a mountain lion, but your average everyday hunters aren't going to want to go out there. But as far as the thylacine is concerned, the Tasmanian tiger, if it is rediscovered, that's going to be a lot of money that's going to have to go into protecting this creature and rehabilitation. And Australia really has not done a very good job of keeping things alive, or I should say Tasmania, that whole area. Really, they've lost a lot of species over the decades. Not all their fault. Climate has caused a lot of brush fires and things like that. So, yes, so we were withholding judgment. We were all waiting, hoping that the pictures weren't going to be as bad as we kind of thought they were. So yes, Neil Waters said that March 1st would be the release date of the photos, but he lied. He lied. Yes, they were not released on Monday. They were released on Sunday. Sunday morning at midnight. Well, midnight in Australia. It was a few hours later here. He released a 19-minute video on YouTube, of course, talking about and showing off these photographs. And it's kind of painful. It's kind of painful to watch that 19 minutes and however many seconds. I talked to myself, mumbled under my breath a few times, and I just wanted to get up and walk away. Pretty much what I expected. Now, I'm not an animal expert as far as Australian creatures are concerned. I live in North America, so I'm pretty well versed in, I usually look at large cat sightings, photographs, and I've seen many, many Bigfoot photos, purported Bigfoot photos. So yeah, I'm used to looking at stuff like that, but I'm not really an Australian or Tasmanian animal expert. They kind of all look the same to me. Kangaroo-ish, I guess. But yeah, I've looked at numerous other pictures of all kinds of creatures, and not to mention ghosts, UFOs, and a lot of other strange stuff. But man, I tell you what, I honestly kind of feel a little bad for Neil. He seems really convinced, without hesitation, that these photographs, or at least the juvenile photograph, it kind of seems like he's budging a little bit on the adult ones, but he's focusing his efforts on the juvenile. I guess that's how you get people to believe you. You acknowledge one thing, but you don't give on the other. So it's kind of what he's trying to do here. Yeah, beyond the shadow of a doubt, he's saying that this is a thylacine. Yes, matter of factish. So yeah, I'm going to share these photos in the chat room. So if you're not in the chat room, it's Tuesday night, a little after 8 for you. If you're on the East Coast, you're live. So go to paranormalking.com and join us. The water is warm. And we're all wearing clothes, so don't worry about that. So the crazy thing about this, and you get a little nervous when you see pictures and people start drawing on them. They draw shapes and circles and arrows. That's when you know, yeah, it's probably not going to end well. And I kept hoping the photos would get better, but they didn't. It was pretty much the same old thing over and over and over and over. He even uses thylacine photos, kind of like cutouts, and he overlays them to really prove his feelings that they're definitely thylacines. He's really doing his best effort to convince the listener, or I guess the viewer, well, I guess you could listen to a YouTube video. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. That's what I say. And we're just not seeing it here. The claims are extraordinary, but the proof falls flat. And it's blurry, and it's you can't really tell what's what. He seems to try to say that the shading, there's shading, there's stripes, there's other details, that make these things thylacines. And he kind of makes it sound like, and this is dangerous, he tries to make it sound as if the burden of proof otherwise is on other people. It's on the non-believers. He's convinced it's the thylacine, but he needs you to prove him wrong. Well, that's not how it works. It's not how science works. It's not how any of this stuff works. Gosh, I mean, it's really kind of upsetting. I kind of feel bad for him in a way because he really seems to put in the effort to support his opinion, and he does a lot of work trying to say, well, this can't be any other animal but a thylacine, over and over again. But he makes no effort to compare it to a patamelon visually like he does the thylacine or any other creature. He just basically dismisses it out of spite, I guess. I mean, one would assume that we're going to see, I don't know, him continue to fight on this. I really don't think he's going to give up. And in the video, he also enlists other hand-picked animal experts. He seems like he knows these people. He's got a good rapport with them. So that's dangerous as well. You know, it's one thing to have Nick Mooney, somebody who's an independent expert, look at these. Granted, a lot of people don't think he's independent because he's more on the government end of things. But when you handpick experts to evaluate and you keep asking questions and they pretty much answer what you want them to say, that's not really going to help. And it's pretty obvious that those guys are guys and girls who are also on Neil's side with hoping these are proof of thylacine. So the biggest problem here with these pictures, and you can see it on that original video on YouTube, all you got to do is scroll down and you start looking at the comments section, and it's nothing more than a debate. Well, that's not a tail, that's an ear. Well, that's not a stripe, that's a shadow. Well, that's not a foot, that's a cat ID tag. I mean, there's so many debates going on in every single photograph. I mean, realistically, if there's any doubt at all as to what these creatures are, it's worthless. This isn't evidence at all of anything, just that an animal happened to trip a camera. So how can we say conclusively that they're an animal, especially that they're an animal that's been extinct for almost 85 years versus anything else? I mean, people can't even settle whether it's a dog or a cat, a patamelon, a wallaby. Who knows what else it could be? Yeah, it could be a thylacine, but there's not enough information. There's not enough evidence to not include all these other possibilities. So let me share with you the first photograph. This one's, he calls 862. And it's a nighttime photograph, which is pretty interesting. So, you know, being on a trail cam, a night picture, it's going to be black and white. So this is, throw this in the chat room. Hopefully it works. There it is. So you see these glowing eyes and you see this head. And of course, automatically he says, well, no animal has a head shape like that, but the thylacine, of course, that proves it. There's the proof. Yeah, he says it can't be a dog, can't be a cat. It could be no other animal other than the thylacine. I don't see that. It could be a cat. It could be a mouse. We don't even know how big that thing is. All right, the second photograph shows a small animal moving away from the camera. It's the theme of these photos. You can tell there was there's a lot of debate too on these cameras, the usage of these cameras, and I can tell you from somebody who's used cameras quite a bit, you got your delay on too much. Your delay is too long because these animals are long gone by the time these pictures are being taken. And not to mention that, but quite a few times they during in the video and elsewhere on Facebook, everywhere, people are saying, well, how come you're not using video? More often than not, these trail cams have video, short video segments, a couple seconds long. It'll trigger it and do a short video. The one that I have in my backyard, it'll take a picture and then a short video. And then I can change the time it resets in between pictures. It's not hard. It's not that expensive either. You can have these out there. I mean, yeah, I've had a cat that looks exactly like that. That looks like a cat to me. You can't see the tail, but you can't see a lot of detail in that, can you? So yeah, the second photograph shows a small animal moving away from the camera. And he spends like 5 or 6 minutes on this thing, drawing lines all over it, saying the head shape, the ears, the head's too big, which you really can't even see most of the head anyway. I don't know why he spends so much time on it. He says this thing has stripes, which, anybody can see that there's leaves bending over the top of the animal. There's sun shining down. So, of course, you're going to have shadows of some sort. But he does say, is that shading or are those stripes? And I'm thinking, well, we know what they are, but we know what you want us to think. And the way he says it, it makes it sound like he already knows the answer, or he has the answer. The big problem with the trail cam pictures is until you have something to compare in the frame, you really don't know the scale of what you're looking at. So in other words, it would have proved helpful to have something in that spot, a different picture to kind of preface all this that could demonstrate how large of a creature we're looking at, and if shade would have been created at the time of day. So an object, put a ball out there, a white ball or something that we know the size of. They call it a football? Is that what they call it? I call it a soccer ball. Something like that. Everybody knows the size of it, and you can see whether or not there would have been shading on that. You should have a timestamp on there, so you should know what time it was, and that would help us compare and give a little bit more information. It's not going to help us determine what this is, but again, we could determine possibly what it's not, which is just as important when you're looking at photographs that really have no detail like these. And this is pretty much impossible at this angle to tell exactly what this creature is. I mean, many animal experts are all, they're all not in agreement here. So obviously, this picture is not that cut and dry. Let's see, another photograph, 864, I believe he calls it. We'll look at that one. Now, when you do look at these pictures, one then the other, you can tell that these are different sized creatures, that some are a little bit bigger than the others. This one's a little smaller. I think this is the Holy Grail right here. This is the one he says proves beyond the shadow of doubt this is the Thylacine. The other two may or may not be patamelons. And he seems like he's almost really willing to bend on those and say that, yeah, those are probably patamelons. But why would a Thylacine follow a patamelon and then have a patamelon follow a Thylacine? Doesn't make sense. You're right, Neil. It doesn't make sense because they're probably all three patamelons. So he says this one has 4 legs, which I don't know how you can really tell that. There's not a lot, again, not a lot of detail. We see the little foot there. What does he call that thing? A hock? Yeah, a hock. It's such a weird word, hock. Yeah, so it also has a banded stripe. That's what he says. But it seems like just about everybody's in agreement that those stripes are really caused by the foliage that's bent over top. And you can only see so much in the frame. There's other stuff that's out of frame that could also be causing the shadows over this creature. So he says the legs, the stripe, the hock, and a lot of other features he say automatically eliminates it from being anything but a thylacine. I mean, all you really see is a seemingly small little creature moving away from the camera. However, this is where the argument starts. So, let alone that little hawk going seemingly over that log away from us. A lot of people think that this is actually a creature coming toward you. So you see the left ear on the left and the right ear on the right. Now, I'm not sure about that, but there's a little bit of blurriness with this creature, so it's kind of hard to tell exactly what. I mean, come on. If you can't agree with what direction something is moving or which way it's facing, how in the heck are you going to say that's definitely a creature that's been extinct for 80 some odd years? I just don't get it. However, with this one, he does go back, provides a measurement from where the camera is, and the camera is literally, I would say the lens is probably maybe 8 inches off the ground. It's pretty low. Most of these creatures in Australia are pretty low to the ground. They're pretty small creatures. So, here in the United States, we'd strap stuff on a tree, probably 3 to 5 feet up, even for turkey and stuff like that. You're not going to have it too high, but you're not going to have it that low either. But it seems like all the trail cams in Australia and Tasmania looking for the thylacine are very, very low. Unfortunately, that creates situations like this to where you're too level, you're too low to the ground, and you don't get that above the creature detail that you need. However, looking at the picture that he took of this, when he went back, it's would have been hard to see this creature at all because of the brush, the heavy brush that was actually above this creature. So I don't know. You can create clearings, I think, and it's still obviously it looks like an animal trackway to me anyway. You can kind of dress up an area to utilize your trail cams. I don't know, but yeah, he's this is the picture. This is the one. So he says he admits what he thinks of the mother and father again are a bit ambiguous, but he says the baby one is definitely a thylacine. Yeah, like I said, his argument then says if the two are patamelons, then why would a thylacine follow a patamelon and then be followed by a patamelon? That is not really the strongest argument, and it seems like to me like a logical fallacy. He's trying to weave people into. He does say in that video that he disagrees with Nick Mooney's opinion, and that Nick himself told him to get as many opinions as possible. He says that he's going to let the majority of people judge it. So basically the majority wins. And again, he's going to surround himself with people who pretty much side with him at this point. He got Nick Mooney's opinion and kind of ruined the story. So I think he's going to ask a lot of other people who he knows and trusts are going to give, for the most part, the stamp of belief approval on it. Because I'm sure a lot of them are in his circle. Yeah, I don't know. So, also, some interesting points too. It's fun sometimes to read through comments because there's some things that maybe you don't think about or things that you see from other people's perspective. And some of the stuff that I read was interesting, such as if this were a juvenile. So this is a baby, no matter what it is, you'd expect to get more footage because a baby creature like this wouldn't travel too far, which I think is a fair point. Granted, we don't know, a thylacine could be a wandering creature. They don't stick to the same place probably. Mountain lions are pretty much the same way. They don't just hang around, a small area for too long. They're constantly on the move. And also, why not overlapping coverage? And I'm a big stickler on overlapping coverage when it comes to trail cams, but unfortunately, it's kind of difficult to do that at night. When they overlap with the IR sensors, it kind of creates a little havoc on things. But there's ways around that. if you test things out, which is what you should do. You never just set up a camera and walk away. You should be able to test those pictures. And overlapping coverage isn't really impossible to do, especially when you have a trail like this, a game trail. Any bend in that trail, you can easily set up another camera. And you set the one, obviously not directing toward the other. You're going to have a little bit of an angle so it keeps the flash out. But again, that's why you have to experiment with these things. And hopefully, somebody also mentioned, hopefully all the trampling that they did in this area to retrieve the picture and then to set up all these measurements didn't scare off whatever these creatures are. Hopefully we can have them come in the frame again, whether it's a pademelon or some other creature. Again, video mode. Why is it not being used? So I don't typically use video mode on my trail cam because it does hog up a lot of memory. But I'm not trying to find an extinct animal in my backyard either. And I think if that were the case, I would be using the mode again. Like I said, it takes a picture, then it takes a video. And you can lower the delay so that as soon as the creature steps into frame, it's going to take a picture. Because it seems like these things are already wandering off by the time the trail cam goes off. You're setting the angle too far. I mean, yeah, you don't want a close-up. But it seems like they didn't really experiment with this too much. Yeah, it's just not. This is just not good. Not a good. You built this thing up to be so wonderful, and then it just falls flat. You argue with somebody who's an animal expert. And I also wonder if they do get evidence. Let's say a pademelon actually wanders in the camera and it's facing the camera, it's smiling. And you can see the creature. You can tell exactly what it is. I mean, would they take that into consideration, or would those pictures even see the light of day on YouTube at all? I mean, you kind of have to. Part of me also thinks that maybe he wants the photos to be ambiguous. Maybe he wants photos that are close. Maybe he knows the chance of getting one on film is pretty slim. I think that would be, the fear here. But I suppose the truth is that he could see a thylacine in a picture of a house cat, and his passion for finding these creatures has blinded his reality. And unfortunately, that's really what it boils down to. This guy he wants to believe so heavily that that's what he sees. It's like the person that sees. They go out in the woods to see Bigfoot, and they take pictures, and they see shadows in the tree line, and they see shadows in the bushes, and they claim that's a Bigfoot. When people really want to see something, they're going to see it no matter how crazy it looks to everybody else. So unfortunately, that's kind of where we're at with that. And what is that? The Kruger-Dunning effect? Yeah, the Kruger-Dunning effect, when you're pretty much, it's a kind of a cognitive bias where people think that they're a lot smarter than what they really are. We see that a lot in the ghost field. People think that they have a lot more knowledge and information about topics than what they actually do. And I think that's part of the problem here with this, that he's, gone from somebody who is obsessed with these creatures. And I think he's only been doing this for like 7 years. So he wants to find these creatures. He's dead set that there's cover-ups and that he's going to discover these things. And now, he's pretty much a true believer. And, to be a naturalist is okay. It doesn't mean that you have a formal education, but it also means that you don't have a formal education. So being a naturalist means that you know about creatures in your backyard for the most part, probably more than the average person. Doesn't really make you an expert. And, it doesn't matter how much you know about animals. When you're looking at photographs of animals, it's a lot different than just looking at animals. So there's a little bit of, you have to know about photography. You have to know about light and angle, and you also have to know about what you can't see in the frame. as well. So there's a lot that goes into this, and I think he's just looking. He wants to be the one to discover this. He wants to be famous. I'd rather be rich than famous, but a lot of people just want that attention. They want to be famous, and I think that's really what he's out for. He wants to be the one to discover this thing, and would be a pretty big deal. And I've said it time and time again. Out of all the cryptids, all the animals that are said to not exist, that are real animals that have existed in reality, not like flying moths, people-sized flying moth and chupacabra and all these other things that are a little bit crazy, or maybe one-off animals. The thylacine, in my opinion, has a pretty good chance of being discovered, I would think, out of all these creatures. And if it were, it would kind of help cryptozoology out a little bit, kind of make us all just a little less kooky than we typically are seen. So now we can take a breath and we can wait for hopefully more evidence to come out about the thylacine. But I think Neil Waters and his crew, they've kind of burned a lot of bridges with this. Granted, this isn't the first time, and this won't be the last time. There's been plenty of videos, plenty of photographs that have come out the same exact way as this, and people tend to forget over time. So we'll see. It will happen again. So Tasmania wasn't a good week for the rediscovery of animals, but Australia had a little bit to celebrate this week as far as extinct animals. Yes, a bee that was thought to be extinct was rediscovered. I mean, not last week, but the work was published. The Australian cloaked bee, which is pretty cool. It's all black. I don't think I have a picture of it. Do I? Maybe I do. We'll see. Hold on, let me check. The Australian cloaked bee, of course I don't, was rediscovered kind of by accident. Not necessarily by accident. It's only been documented 6 times in history. And the last time it was seen was 1923. So that actually predates the last time the thylacine was seen. So that, to me, I think that's more impressive than, let's see. There he is. Pretty ugly. So yeah, a little longer than what the thylacine's been missing. And it's a good thing, though, because obviously bees are dying off all over the world. So for us to rediscover a bee species, that's pretty good. It's pretty positive. Entomologist James Dorey, a PhD student at Flinders University, made the discovery of 3 separate sites of this bee after sampling 225 areas. So the bees were not actually part of his target for research, but he had intended to look out for the species while he conducted his other research. So he knew these bees were out there. These are like ground-dwelling bees, so they're not your regular bees, but he kept his eye out for them, knowing that they were out there. And he's the sole publisher of this research, which is fantastic. The results of this discovery are still a little bit concerning, however, as this points with these 3 separate small, I guess you'd call it separate sites or outcroppings of these creatures, points to population isolation, which could lead to a lot of other issues, including, but not limited to, extinction. Causes a lot of other issues like inbreeding and things like that. But extinction, definitely high on the list. But if this thing survived 85 years, that's a little bit of positivity for the future for that. And there's a little picture of that little black bee. UFO news. Let's catch up on that story. So we have an update on the thylacine, but we also have the update on that American Airlines flight 2292 last week that we talked about. It's been all over the news probably one of the biggest UFO stories of the year. So they radioed to Albuquerque Center that they had encountered a long cylindrical object that kind of sort of somewhat looked like a cruise missile. Yeah, they weren't matter-of-factors. They didn't say, yes, a cruise missile just flew over our plane. The encounter happened on February 21st at 1:19 Central Standard Time over the northwest corner of New Mexico. So the transmission was as follows. Quote, "Do you have any targets up here? We just had something go right over the top of us. I hate to say this, but it looked like a long cylindrical object that almost looked like a cruise missile type of thing, moving really fast over the top of us," unquote. Yeah, that 14-second audio was uploaded by Steve Douglas, which he also wrote about on his Deep Blue Horizon web blog. So yeah, then the flurry of updates started to kind of pile up. So YouTube, Scott Brando, who is the host of UFO of Interest. If there's a UFO video, this guy's all over it. Pretty much debunking the debunkable, getting to the heart of the matter with a lot of these stories, as is Mick West of metabunk.org. So both of these gentlemen did their independent research. Scott Brando did link to Mick West's blog, or well, I guess it's like a message board. So a lot of people add to it, add information to this. Once either one of these two get involved in the analysis of a story, it's pretty much quickly torn apart. The truth comes out. It comes up no matter what the truth may lead to. But this one's a little shaky. It seems a little bit different than what I had originally thought it was going to turn out when I started digging through this research. So initially, it seemed like there's a couple of candidates of aircraft that flew close to the American Airlines flight. So there was a Learjet with the tail number N738RJ that flew over the airliner at about 5,000 feet and at about 33,000 feet away. That sounds pretty far away. That's a few miles. Like that's like 5 or 6 miles. But it's really not for an aircraft flying at 300 miles an hour. And the small Learjet could be misinterpreted to look like a missile from that angle. It's really long and thin. The wings really aren't that big or that tall for this aircraft. So that seemed to be the explanation for the timing, unfortunately, didn't add up. So the incident, where these two aircraft crossed paths, was about 8 minutes prior to when it was actually reported. So it's possible that the pilot and the other crew, maybe they talked about it before reporting it. Maybe they hesitated, thinking that maybe they're going to be crazy. But it sounded to me, when you listen to the audio, that it sounded like they reported it pretty much seconds after they saw it. You know, the pilot seemed a little startled about the whole incident. But maybe somebody else on the plane saw it and reported it to somebody who reported to somebody who finally got back to the crew up front. But the big issue with the analysis is the fact that the FAA responded to the claim by stating, quote, "A pilot reported seeing an object over New Mexico shortly after noon local time on Sunday, February 21st, 2021. FAA air traffic controllers did not see any object in the area on their radar scopes," unquote. So the Learjet should have been seen on the radar. I mean, it's readily viewable on at least 2 flight tracking software things that I've seen. The response was made to Tyler Rogaway of the website The Drive. So we do have confirmation that the pilot did report something. We can also tentatively rule out a couple of aircraft that intercepted the American Airlines flight at different times before and after the report. But that Learjet, I still wonder if that's really what they saw. And maybe the timing is off. And, the FAA stating that there was no object on their radar telescopes at the time. I should say radar scopes at the time. Maybe that's because of that 8 minutes. So if they're saying 8 minutes after the actual report, if there's a time difference, they're going with that time difference and saying that there was no plane there at the time, but a few minutes prior there was. So I wonder if it's just that, and maybe there's a little bit of mistake in the time. But so far, I've not seen any more updates to that, other than a lot of people getting this. The FBI is involved in this. Well, the FBI is aware of it. Doesn't mean that they're actually investigating it. And I think people are making a little bit more out of that than what really is being intended. I think there's still going to be a little bit more research to this, and people are going to kind of dig into it a little bit more. But yeah, I wouldn't get too carried away with, this being a UFO. I think there is a logical conclusion to this, but I just think that the information is just getting tossed around a little bit too much, and we're taking it a little bit too seriously. But I think more will come out about this. It's just going to take a little bit of time, as most of these flights do. Sometimes it just does take time for information to trickle to the general public. I mean, they don't like talking about UFOs. Oh, I'm sorry, UAPs, when it comes to public flights, because they don't want people getting scared, I guess. And still that old school mentality when it comes to pilots and things. But good on him to actually report it, because a lot of pilots don't say anything because they don't want to get grounded. They don't want people thinking they're absolutely crazy. So hopefully we'll have more of an update on that UFO UAP incident in the future. Ghost news this week. An interesting occurrence. I don't know. I kind of, now I think about it, I kind of feel mean about this. But I was actually laughing about this. I thought, how silly is this? So a pair of paranormal investigators nearly did their job early Monday morning. Danny and Felicity Duffy, who host a YouTube channel about paranormal investigation, discovered a skull, a human skull, amongst some tattered clothing during an outing near an abandoned pub over this last weekend. They called police around 12:35 a.m. to report a suspicious item. Police responded and questioned the couple, but released them at about 3:30 a.m. That's quite a long time to hold somebody. So I wonder what that discussion was about. Of their discovery, Danny stated he saw an army-style jacket near the remains. He told the Manchester Evening News, quote, "Then I saw what looked like a pebble on the floor. I moved the bushes to the side, and it was a human skull in the tree line. It really did give us a shock. My legs turned to jelly. We rang the police right away," unquote. The police stated the couple were seemingly shaken up by the discovery, and Danny added, quote, "I've not slept. I can't get it out of my mind. I've never come across anything like that before. We both felt sad. Felicity had been quite upset. We've only slept for about an hour. As soon as I woke up, I thought it was a bad dream," unquote. So yeah, okay, yeah, I did kind of laugh. I was thinking to myself, you're paranormal investigators. You're out there in the field. You're out there. You never know what's going to happen. I mean, these scary situations, this is what you live for. This is what you're out there for. What else are you out there for? But I get it. It's not every day you see human bones. And I don't know how, what the, how long they were decaying, or if it's just the skull they found, or if there's other remains. You think they would have smelled something if there was more remains, and it would have been like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't go in these bushes. But come on, man, that's what you're out there for. You're out there to discover scary stuff. I mean, at least they didn't scream and say, "Dude, run," and run off. So that's a little bit of positivity for them right there. But yeah, I wonder if they were trespassing. But at least they discovered something. They kind of sort of did their job. They did find a ghost in a way, in a manner of speaking, a dead person. And obviously, this has only just been, well, it's been over a day. So, but still, it's under investigation. There's no findings as far as I know. No one's been arrested. Nothing has been discovered. It's going to take probably a few days, few weeks for this this evidence to be processed, the skull to be figured out, maybe who it belongs to, if they can get dental records or anything off of it, any DNA or anything like that. So kind of a scary situation, but come on, you're ghost investigators. It's what you live for. Anyway, other news. So we thought this was over. Now, I thought we were done talking about these monoliths. I guess not. I thought this was like so long ago. It's so 2020. Talk about metal monoliths. Last year, the craze went global after a strange, tall, silvery monolith was spotted by a helicopter at a remote area in Utah. That story went viral. Then, without warning, they were popping up everywhere. At least 100 other monolith-like structures have popped up all over the world, with the majority of them happening in December of last year. Also happening with these, as quickly as they were being discovered, they were being destroyed. It seemed like it went along with the story. People find it, and somebody else destroys it within a day or two, which is really sad and really unfortunate. But as the calendar turned, we didn't really hear too much about these. There were a few in January that were popping up here and there, but most were just following on the gimmick. It wasn't just, these happening way up on a hill or a mountain or anything like that. These were just turning up in like town centers and things like that. So really nothing major happening. And on February 14th, a 12-foot tall monolith appeared in a roundabout. So yes, in a busy area of the city here in Kinshasa, in the Republic of Congo. So kind of a busy area. Just appeared overnight. And during the day, there's a little bit of crowd around the object. And the crowd got a little bit bigger. As these things usually do, they bring people to the area. People start talking about these things. And they keep wondering where it came from and what it means. So it went from a lot of people gathering around this thing, taking selfies and being silly, to people laughing and it started into some serious discussions. That's about where the structure may have come from and if there was anything evil attributed to the sudden appearance of this strange monolith. And people were well aware that this is happening all over the world. It's not just in their backyard. So, of course, you know what's coming next, that this thing is probably going to get dismantled. Well, it didn't take too long. Later on that afternoon, numerous people began tearing apart the structure to see what it was made of. I'm sure you could just tap on it. Can't you just tap on it? What are you going to tear it apart for? Not too long after that, people began smashing it with sticks and other objects. And then, of course, they lit it on fire. I mean, what else are you going to do at that point? You can't tear it down. You can't knock it over. You can't completely bash it with a stick. Set it on fire. That always works. So I'll throw a picture in the chat room of a little bit of that melee. There was quite a few pictures of this thing, but here's a crowd gathering in the town. Looks like they're all having fun, though. It's not like people were. Some of the news reports I read said that people were thinking this was an evil thing, and they were afraid of it, so they just burned it down. I think they were just having fun with it, and lit it on fire for Sunday afternoon's sake. Yeah. And they continue. They continue to pop up, which is scary. The metal monolith craze actually has a Wikipedia page. So you can go there and you can count. I stopped counting after about 100 of these things all over the world. pretty much every continent. It's yikes, really, really crazy that they're happening everywhere. So we've got a couple minutes left here, and I'm actually going to do, yes, believe it or not, I'm going to do a book of the week. It's a book that I talked about quite a while ago, a couple months ago. And finally, I still haven't read it all. Sorry, Ben. Pretty much 3/4 of the way through this thing, but it's really, I always say really, really good or really, really interesting, but it is. It's really, really interesting. The book is called Big If True, Adventures in Oddity, and it's published by Benjamin Radford. If that name sounds familiar, well, it should. Benjamin Radford, he's known as a skeptic, but he's a pretty grounded skeptic as far as I'm concerned. He's the deputy editor of Skeptical Inquirer Science magazine. So he's part of that CSI, the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry. He's an award-winning author, co-author, or editor of over 20 books and thousands of articles on a wide variety of topics, including urban legends, the paranormal, critical thinking, and media literacy. So it's these articles that actually make this book up. Benjamin Radford's also a board game designer, puzzle designer, film director. He's actually a science-based paranormal investigator. So kids, if you want to grow up and you want to get paid to investigate ghosts, you have two options. You either get your own TV show, good luck with that, or you become a science-based paranormal investigator, kind of a skeptic, and depending upon the organization you work for, you might actually get paid for travel. I don't get paid for travel. I pay for travel. He's also co-founder and co-host of the Squaring the Strange podcast, which you can still hear. It's been on the air for 4 years now. Geez, 4 years. So yes, Benjamin Radford's Big If True, Adventures in Oddities. So this is actually based on magazine columns to the Skeptical Inquirer magazine over the years. Pretty much people ask questions about certain things, and he does the research, digs into them, and gives you an answer in an article. I'm pretty lucky here. I have a limited first edition, the first 50. I have number 12 of 50, autographed, of course, from Benjamin Radford. I really enjoy his reading. It's actually one of his books on ghost investigation that got me to contact him and talk to him about investigation and about some of the skeptical angles of things, and got me to see things in a different light. And he and I talk a lot about different aspects of this. But this book is broken down into several sections. So you have legends, monsters, ghosts, mysterious powers and places, UFOs, health and medicine, conspiracies, and skepticism. But again, it's a series of articles, and it's very, very interesting. A lot of information about a lot of topics that you probably take for granted as being a true story, and he gives you the reality behind it. Lots of different things, and this book is available on Amazon. See, I do have a picture of it somewhere. Let's see. We throw that in chat real quick, and as I get that going, I want to thank everybody for tuning in tonight, showing up in the chat room, and showing up at all. I mean, I appreciate you listening to the show. I know you're listening. I see the numbers and things, so I do appreciate that. It makes it all worth it. All the research I do into bringing you this show each and every week. Hopefully it's a lot different than any other show that you listen to out there. There's a lot of different shows, and you don't have to listen to this one, but I do appreciate the fact that you do. So let me throw the link in chat for this book, and that is the book of the week, Big If True, Adventures in Oddity, the book of the week for March 2nd. What's that, 3rd? March 2nd. Let me clip the end off of that so it works. And it didn't work. Well, I got to copy and paste that. Didn't work. I know what I did. But again, yes, thank you for for tuning in, whether it's live or you're listening to the show in March 15th or something like that. Either way, I do appreciate it once again. So that being said, I will see you next week. But for now, keep your eyes in the skies, your ears in the woods, the hair standing on the back of your neck, and always keep your mind slightly ajar. And above all else, you know this, you know the words, you know how it is. You sang it in karaoke. You were pretty hammered that night, but that's okay. Don't stop believing. For the Paranormal News Insider, this is Dr. Brian D. Parsons reporting.